Omega, for many, marks a pinnacle in fine watch collecting. To others, that pinnacle is reserved for Rolex or Panerai or some other high-end Swiss brand. But Omega has a major following, and I count myself among them. I have gone into the Omega boutique countless times to try on this Mark II reissue. Something about the vintage styling in the bullhead case, the shrouded lugs, the printed tacky scale, which is loomed from below. More on that later. But before we get too deep into this watch, let's touch on a little bit of history. The Speedmaster won the race to the moon in 1969 on the wrist of Buzz Aldrin. Neil had left his watch aboard the Lem. Also in that year, Omega launched the Speedmaster Mark II that they thought would modernize the model for the upcoming decade. The watch was produced from 1969 through 1972. At that point, the Mark III had been introduced and was gaining momentum. This was the beginning of a nearly 20-year-long run of confusing Speedmaster Mark something models. But they garnered a following and a dedicated collector base. As a result, everyone applauded the reissue of the Mark II in 2014. The Speedmaster Mark II reissue is the same form factor as the vintage watch, but everything inside has changed. First, let's talk about fit. The case of the Mark II is 42.4 millimeters wide. It seems small, but it wears larger than you would expect, mostly due to the 46 millimeter lug-to-lug length, paired with a robust case height, 15 millimeters, I think. It does present a hang-up risk, and you can see that beautiful starburst is right where you're going to catch the wear. I've got a couple scratches on there, but honest wear is cool wear. The movement is really where the Mark II outshines the reissue outshines the vintage Mark II. This is powered by the 3330 Omega coaxial movement. It's using its Silicon 14 balance spring, and it is a column wheel chronograph. The 3330 is based off the ETA 7750, heavily modified into a coaxial escapement among many other changes. They are COSC certified, and my experience has been really good with it so far. Extremely accurate and reliable with a great, at least 52-hour power reserve. I expect zero issues from this watch. And I can tell you that according to an app like Hairspring or something like that, this watch is currently running at plus 3 seconds a day, which is great. Excuse me. Once you get your eyes on the business end of this Mark II, you can see what made me fall in love with it. You have 3 subdials. You have a running seconds at 9 o'clock. You have an hour counter with the date at 6 o'clock. And you have a seconds counter for the chronograph at 3. The date window at 6 has a black background that contrasts nicely with the gray face, but not so much that it's distracting. The hands on the 2 chrono counter subdials are orange to separate them from the running time. This sounds confusing, but when you start reading the watch, the color differences really make themselves abundantly clear. The hands are loomed and very bright when charged, making them readable. The chrono second hand is massive and brightly colored. And you can see it really sticks out as it runs. The crystal is flat with an extremely effective AR coating that makes it appear as if it's almost not there. So what I want to show you is what really drew me to the Mark II. Bear with me for 1 second. Let me turn some lights off here. And you can see that the loom on this watch is beautiful, with the tachymeter underneath loomed also. And it's super bright. Omega is very well known for their very, very bright loom. go. And let me get some light back on. There we go. So the tachymeter is printed on a disc that sits just above the dial, and you can see that some orange shows through as you move the watch there. And it just makes it really jump off the face. It's kind of a reverse sandwich dial. I find it very legible. The chronograph functions perfectly with a very tactile response when you stop it and reset it. That's largely due to the column wheel chronograph. And it does all things a watch should do very, very well. So the bracelet. The Mark II comes on a very true vintage-inspired bracelet. The links are small, smaller than what I have found on other Speedmasters or Seamasters. They're not a oyster-style bracelet. However, they are screwed together, as you can see. It's very easy to size it yourself. The drape on it, as you can see, is just this really, really nice, no pinch, nothing protruding drape of the bracelet. It really fits and hugs your wrist incredibly well. Let's see. It is super comfortable. The clasp is the other thing that really makes this stand out. Most people are familiar with the Rolex Glide Lock clasp. Tudor does something similar. This is Omega's attempt at it. And they have implemented this clasp into several of their newest watches, including the Marine Master 300 reissue. You get an additional 9.6 millimeters of bracelet if you need it. And throughout the day, I adjust this pretty often as my wrist swells and shrinks with the climate control. You can see you press down on that button, and it just slides out, giving you some more space. It's really, really nice. So, in conclusion, I gotta say the Speedmaster Mark II is a very polarizing and interesting piece from Omega. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people really only respect the true moon watch from the Speedmaster lineup. It's also big. It is on the larger side, and as you can see, if you're someone that hates scratches on their watches, this one is prone to catching a few just due to its height. The size is also in direct contrast to the Moonwatch size, which wears smaller despite being very similar in case size. But if you're somebody like myself with larger wrists, it wears very, very well. The bracelet is a work of art. Excellent drape, very customizable, and the timekeeping has been a real treat to experience. I'm not sure how long this particular model will be available from Omega, or even if it still is. So if you get a chance to grab one, I highly, highly recommend it. So thanks a lot, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.